At Hawkins Hartness House, which we had which is our office, by the way. Some of you know that, some of you may not. And we had the opportunity to restore this, especially the inside of it, when we took office. And we just want to make sure we preserve our history both physically and we preserve the story of our history as well. Because sometimes we forget to pass those stories down and they get lost. So I'm going to ask my General Counsel, Stephen Walker, to come up and tell you a little bit more.
All right, while I get ready to talk, I'll ask the volunteers if they'll then go ahead and pass out the cigars, but let's not light them up yet. Y'all can hold on to them there. Just want to tell you a little bit about why we are here. It was on April 17th in 1844 when Henry Clay was the Whig candidate for President of the United States, and he was the favorite to win the White House that year, that he visited Raleigh. And just across the street, over there directly across on North Street, there's not a tree there anymore, but there was a large oak tree that was there, and he sat down under that oak tree and he wrote a letter which would come to be known as the Raleigh letter. In that letter he opposed the annexation of Texas, feeling that it would put more strain on an already strained union and that it would plunge the fragile nation into war. Many historians believe that it was his opposition to the annexation of Texas that cost him the 1844 election. So sitting under that tree, he went from front runner to not being front runner anymore. The oak became diseased in 1991 and had to be removed. After its removal, the Department of Administration's Landscape Services section germinated seedlings from the tree and then sent them to the 100 schools in Wake County with instructions that they be planted on the grounds. It was only a few feet from where we stand today that such a momentous event took place. When we first started discussing an event like this, I started to research some of the life of Henry Clay. Found him to be a fascinating historical figure, and I'm excited we're going to get to hear a little bit more about his life from a man who really knows his history. So I'd like to introduce North Carolina Supreme Court Justice Paul Newby to come up and share a little bit more about the life of Henry Clay.
What Stephen means is that Henry Clay and I were contemporaries, so I kind of lived through some of it. It is amazing when you stop and reflect that on a day like this, perhaps, certainly on this day 170 years ago, the direction of our country was impacted and changed. And it is interesting that the 1844 election was between Henry Clay and a North Carolinian, James K. Polk. Polk, North Carolinian transplant running from Tennessee, and of course Henry Clay, a Virginian, running from the state of Kentucky. Now, you ask yourself, why would somebody declare that they didn't need Texas, that we as a nation didn't need Texas? Well, we talked about it among our chambers, and we decided that on his visit here, Henry Clay tried North Carolina barbecue. And upon sampling North Carolina barbecue, or perhaps it was an RC Cola and a moon pie, I'm not sure. History hasn't kept that for us. But he probably thought about what they call barbecue in Texas and compared that to what is real barbecue from North Carolina and said, we just don't need Texas. And from what I understand, he was first to coin the phrase, just don't mess with Texas. So, yeah, a little different connotation than perhaps what was meant. So, 1844, now Henry Clay had been in politics pretty much his whole life. As a matter of fact, he was appointed to the U.S. Senate at age 29, and for those of you that are U.S. Constitution scholars, he may be the only person to have served in the Senate who was not qualified per the Constitution to have served in the Senate. Well, maybe there was a guy from Illinois that served in the Senate that wasn't. I won't go there. No, shouldn't think about that. So in 1811, he was first elected to Congress, and the day he took oath of office as a congressman, he also became the Speaker of the House. Certainly one of the youngest speakers of the House. He succeeded a man that's near and dear to me, a North Carolinian, by the name of Nathaniel Macon. Now, he's near and dear to me because he is the namesake. Nathaniel Macon is the namesake of my wife, Macon. He's one of his ancestors. And Nathaniel Macon had served during the Jefferson presidency. Henry Clay ran for president against Andrew Jackson and against John Quincy Adams. He actually ran for president for a period of about 20 years. Every 4 years he was running for president. But in that particular election, you may recall that there was no winner in the Electoral College, and the House of Representatives chose John Quincy Adams. Henry Clay then became John Quincy Adams Secretary of State, which subsequently people would allege that he and John Quincy Adams had cut a deal. So Andrew Jackson, was a lifelong enemy of Clay because of what went on in that election. But Clay was well known as the great compromiser for the purpose of the Union. He made this statement: if you want to try to figure out who I am as a person and what my goal is, it's to keep the Union together. Now, his formula for that, along with the various slave state compromises, was to keep a tariff for foreign goods, so that if you were, all the manufacturers in the North would be protected. It was to spend government money for internal improvements, and to support a national bank. Now, I don't know exactly where that would put him in today's political spectrum. He was absolutely against any foreign war, and as you're going to hear in just a moment from the Lieutenant Governor Gardner, the letter itself is clear that we as Americans should avoid any kind of entanglement, including that of trying to acquire Texas and California, which his opponent, James K. Polk, said, I'm all about making Texas and California part of America. They deserve to be part of that. And Henry Clay said, no, we don't want to get involved in a foreign war. We need to protect the nationalism or our own interest here. So, as was said, 1844, he's the front runner. He does this letter that says, we don't want Texas. We shouldn't pay the price to get us Texas. And in doing so, it seems that the people of the United States didn't agree with him. So ultimately, he would lose that election to James K. Polk, and of course, the rest is history. We do have Texas barbecue now as part of our national cuisine, and we never had Henry Clay as one of our presidents. Henry Clay said, I'd rather be right than president. You'll have to determine whether or not he was right, but I can tell you he was never president. The other irony, of course, is if you look at the marker over here, it talks about, it's just here off of North Street where that red brick house is, and it indicates that he was the invited guest of a Colonel Polk. Now, you know, I started thinking, why would Colonel Polk, who, I mean, this is North Carolina, he's bound to have been related to James K. Polk, why would he have invited Henry Clay to be his house guest? Perhaps it was to get him to sign a letter such as this. Although it also brings to mind, you know, what about a pig in a Polk? I just don't know. At any rate, you know, when you think about North Carolina and just history, really, on every street corner, we certainly are grateful for the Lieutenant Governor and his desire to keep at the forefront some of these aspects of history. Certainly Henry Clay Day, as we think about one letter, one policy, but it was a huge policy. Would America just stay as it was, or would we take on Texas, take on California, expand westward? That was the issue of the day. And folks had to take sides. Henry Clay did, and he enjoyed or suffered the consequences of that decision. But thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for the opportunity we have to just reflect a little bit about some of the history that's made here in our beautiful city of Raleigh.
Thank you, Justice Newby. And as was mentioned, as you know full well, this is the first annual Henry Clay Day, and we want to do this every year. We want to do this for a couple reasons. One is to remember our history, obviously, but two, we also want to use this occasion to recognize an individual in the state of North Carolina who has dedicated their careers to serving the people of North Carolina. And we're going to do that today by recognizing a gentleman who has served the state for many decades, a couple decades, I should say, for many years, for a long time, dedicated his life to serving the people of North Carolina. He served as Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, the first Republican Lieutenant Governor since 1890 something, and I'm only the second, so we have quite a tight little bond here. He also served as Congressman in North Carolina as well, United States Congressman from North Carolina, and is now serving as the Commissioner of the ABC Board. And I do not know a finer gentleman in the state of North Carolina. I do not know a finer statesman for the state of North Carolina than Jim Gardner. And we are going to punish him today by asking him to read an abridged copy of the Raleigh letter by Henry Clay. So please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Governor Jim Gardner.
Dan told me when I came over here today that this was going to be a fun event. Believe me, it is going to be. Judge, you should be reading this because you know all the history. But anyway, here we go. Raleigh, April 17th, 1844. Subsequent to my departure from Ashland in December the 1st last, I received various communications from popular assemblies and private individuals requesting an expression of my opinion upon the question of annexation of Texas to the United States. The rejection of the overture of Texas some years ago to become annexed to the United States is met with general acceptance. Nothing had since occurred materially to vary the question. I had seen no evidence of a desire being entertained on the part of any considerable portion of the American people that Texas should become an integral part of the United States. If the government of the United States were to acquire Texas, it would acquire along with it all of the problems which Texas is under, and among them the actual or suspended war between Mexico and Texas. Of that consequence, there cannot be a doubt annexation and war with Mexico are identical. Now, for one, I certainly am not willing to involve this country in a foreign war for the object of acquiring Texas. I know there are those who regard such a war with indifference and as a trifling affair on account of the weaknesses of Mexico and her inability to inflict serious injury upon this great country of ours. But I do not look upon it thus lightly. I regard all wars as great calamities, to be avoided if possible, and honorable peace as the wisest and truest policy of this country. What the United States must need are union, peace, and patience. Nor do I think that the weakness of a power should form a motive in any case for inducing us to engage in or to appreciate the evils of war. Honor and good faith and justice are equally due from this country towards the weak as towards the strong. And if an act of injustice were to be perpetuated towards any power, it would be more compatible with the dignity of the nation, in my judgment, less dishonorable to inflict it upon a powerful instead of a weak foreign nation. But are we perfectly sure that we should be free from injury in a state of war with Mexico? Have we any security that countless members of foreign vessels under the authority and flag of Mexico would not prey upon our defenseless commerce in the Mexican Gulf, or the Pacific Ocean, and on every other sea and ocean? This view of the subject supposes that the war would be confined to the United States and Mexico as the only belligerents. But have we any certain guarantee that Mexico would obtain no allies among the great European powers? Suppose any such powers, jealous of our increasing greatness and disposed to check our growth and cripple us, were to take part in behalf of Mexico in this war. How would the different belligerents present themselves to the enlightened world? and this is the short version. Assuming that the annexation of Texas is war with Mexico, it is competent to the treaty-making power to plunge this country into war, not only without the concurrence of, but without consulting Congress, to which by the Constitution belongs exclusively the power of declaring war. It is useless to disguise that there are those who espouse and those who oppose the annexation of Texas upon the ground of the influence which it would exert in the balance of political power between two great sections of the Union. I conceive that no motive for the acquisition of a foreign territory would be more unfortunate or pregnant with more fatal consequences than that of obtaining it for the purpose of strengthening one part against another part of the common confederacy. Such a principle put into practical operation would menace the existence, if it did not certainly sow the seeds, of the dissolution of the Union. In conclusion, they may be stated in a few words to be that I consider the annexation of Texas at this time, without the assent of Mexico, as a measure comprising the national character, involving us certainly in a war with Mexico, probably with other foreign powers, dangerous to the integrity of the Union, expedient in the present financial condition of this country, and not called for by any general of public opinion. And I will echo what the judge just said. He said, I would rather be right than be president. We don't have many people like that. We ought to carry this up to Washington and lay it on a certain desk that I know right now. Thank you.
Governor Gardner, thank you very much for that. I wish, even though I have no idea what you just said, I do wish that people spoke like that, again, with that kind of conviction. So thank you for doing that. And we also have a little commemorative item here for Governor Gardner. This is the first annual Order of the Henry Clay Oak. It's going to be given to Jim Gardner for 2014. So that acrylic plaque along with all those other acrylic plaques. So at this time we're going to do something a little different. We're going to offer up a toast to Henry Clay on Henry Clay Day. If you have a cigar, we're going to toast by lighting your cigars or drinking an RC Cola or eating a moon pie. So this is a special time for us. So here's the toast. Here's to Henry Clay, who stood up for what he thought was right, regardless of the consequences. And here's to history and to very simple acts which reverberate throughout the ages.
Hear, hear.
Light them up.